everyone, and welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy. I'm the host of the show and a writer and performer based in Los Angeles, California, on strike, walking the picket line. This is what, week 9? It's the end of week 9? Something like that. It's dragging on. It's weird. The studios lost something like $20 billion in valuation on Wall Street the day after the strike was called, which is something like 20 times what the writers are asking for. It's almost as if they are trying to grind labor to dust, and that is their sole purpose, and not actually running a profitable business. Almost as if that is the exact way all businesses run when Wall Street and private equity get their talons in it. Interesting. Anyway, they will cave, and the WGA and SAG will win. Because for them, it's just another yacht in their fleet, and for us, it is our livelihoods and our artistic lives. Maybe not if you're creating MILF Manor, but for most of us. Anyway, speaking of creative lives, oh boy, I got a great guest today talking about their creative life. Why, today's episode is Rob Mazurek. If you don't know who Rob is, I'm going to read you his bio right now. Originally from Jersey City, musician and composer and visual artist, Rob Mazurek started playing trumpet and cornet in high school after his family moved to Naperville, Illinois. He first learned the foundations of improvised music while studying jazz theory and practice with David Bloom at the Bloom School of Jazz in Chicago, and then became a mainstay of Chicago jazz in the 1980s. In 1994, Rob formed the Chicago Underground Collective with guitarist Jeff Parker, also a previous guest on this show, and a cast of revolving players, which in turn birthed Isotope 217, both groups releasing albums on the seminal label Thrill Jockey. In the decades since then, Rob founded the Exploding Star Orchestra, has earned numerous commissions and awards, and in general has created more music and art than a short bio can properly elucidate. Earlier this spring, Rob's most recent work for Exploding Star Orchestra, Lightning Dreamers, was released on International Anthem, and like everything else Rob creates, it's wonderful. Highly recommended. I love it. And I love this interview. Rob is really open, and we really get into the spiritual dimensions of the things he creates and how his interest in that formed in childhood, and some personal things that have happened to him that influence his creative journey and his journey to be a singular person and a singular artist. And he was just so open and interesting. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you do, my friends, why not check out other episodes of the show? I have been doing this for over 13 years. I have hundreds of interviews with writers and musicians and performers and comedians and actors and artists. And what I like to do here in the beginning is a little recommended if you like Rob, well, you might like my talks with other people in the world of jazz or in Chicago music. Like I said, Jeff Parker has been on the show before. Sam Prekop has been on the show before. I just talked to Zena Parkins a couple weeks ago. Terry Riley has been on the show. Bobby Previtt's been on the show. David Harrington of Cronus Quartet. Check out those episodes. If you like the show, why not subscribe? Why not leave a review? I barely ever ask people to leave reviews on Apple Podcasts, but apparently it helps the show. I don't know if that's true or not. I just know that's what I've been told, so I guess it's true? ? Anyway, I like seeing what people write. If you're so inclined, I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Andy Beckerman. Twitter is a sinking ship, but I'll still be writing jokes there until we're all underwater. But Instagram's still pretty fun. What else? I have a philosophy Substack where I write about living life in the corpse of the Enlightenment, which is the 20th and 21st century. I try to make it funny. You can find that at theslowdystopia.substack.com. No boy, I got a lot of great episodes coming up, including Jad Fair, Matt Chrisman from Chapo Trap House. We get into what happened in the 70s to turn the world into a psychotic wonderland. So stay tuned for those. But for now, let's talk to Rob. Is this your studio?
Yeah, this is a piano that I inherited from Bill Dixon, the great Bill Dixon, when he passed away. and he did a lot of composing on, and then the rest of the synthesizers and studios over here, and a bunch of modular stuff and artwork and blah, blah, blah.
Do you feel a difference? This is a dumb question. I'm just going to preface this. This is a dumb question. But do you feel a change when you walk into the studio as opposed to being in another part of, I'm assuming this is your house, but.
Yeah, it is my house. Yeah, yes and no, because if I took you through the house right now, I have kind of art and music kind of everywhere. You know, it kind of, I like this idea of being just surrounded by things I've made and things that other people have made, whether it's sound or vision and books, you know, as well. But yeah, when you actually walk into when I walk into this space, I mean, I feel like the whole house is charged, but the rooms especially, I have this, you know, where I do the sound in here mostly, and then I have a painting, sculpture, installation studio outside. So when I go into either of those spaces, it's definitely, you know, the eyes widen and you get a little adrenaline boost, you know, and every day I would say that's true. But it's kind of like the whole house as well, because I like to surround myself with these things that give energy. And that's actually why I make things, is to give energy.
Were you someone who was always sensitive to that energy? I asked that as someone who was very closed off for a long time, up until my 30s. And I wasn't really... I was probably sensing it, but I just wasn't responding to it. And then once I started to kind of like relax, I could understand the different energies in different rooms and from different people and all that kind of stuff. But were you someone who always felt that?
I mean, strangely, when I was first coming up, I mean, some of the first records I bought while learning how to play the trumpet, after the teacher said, you're good at that, so why don't you keep doing it? You know, you get that little boost of, you know, confidence. And so I kept going. And then I bought, you know, Miles Davis, Bitches Brew, Art Ensemble of Chicago, Urban Bushman, and Charlie Parker Live at Birdland, you know. So it couldn't be like three extremely different sounding records to young ears, or even older ears than that. So it was really, I was kind of grappling with asking myself just why are all these musics that sound completely different than each other called jazz? You know what I'm saying? That type of thing. So anyway, it kind of started there. And then when I moved into Chicago in 1983, right out of high school, because I wanted to play jazz, I became more enamored with Blue Note records and Prestige records, you know, of Miles and Kenny Durham, Lee Morgan, and whoever else. And then it took me a few more years to get back to thinking about a concert I saw in 1981, which was the Sun Ra concert at the Jazz Institute at the Jazz Festival in Chicago, which completely was a concert that pinned me in my seat and terrified me, and in a very amazing way, where the energy from that thing was just palpable, you know. But when I get back to that, then things just started opening up, you know. I was lucky enough to have good teachers too. So one of my earliest composition teachers, classical composition teachers, insisted that I read, you know, good literature and poetry. He made me go to the Art Institute and look at paintings and report back to him about the paintings. And all the while I'm thinking, what does this have to do with me wanting to compose and become a jazz musician? But only later do you realize that was the grounding of, that was the groundwork for the opening, you know, meaning opening oneself. And then I also became very, you know, involved in Buddhism. So I chanted Nam Myoho Renge Kyo for years, and starting in the 80s which also opened me up to the idea of different things going on. And maybe that's a long way of answering your question, but that's how it kind of started, you know.
No, it's great because now I have about 6 or 7 other questions from that.
Yeah.
Going back to, you know, having to go to the museum, having to go in quotes, you know, your composition teacher asking you to go there, or
Right.
hearing a piece, and this is, let's say, before you saw that Sun Ra concert. Did you allow yourself, or could you feel the emotions that came up in you seeing a painting or listening to a composition, or was it more of an intellectual exercise for you at that point? I asked it just because I know, like, so many paintings where I was kind of flabbergasted by them. Like, just say surrealists, I think, were one of those things that, like, really kind of dazzled me, but I couldn't emotionally interact with them until later in life.
Right. I think it was maybe at the beginning a little intellectual, but I think it was mostly feeling, because I think I've gone on feel more than anything since I was, you know, teenager at least. But yeah, when I went into the Artist's Institute, I gravitated, because he didn't say anything specifically. He said anything that catches your soul. I was in the Impressionist room, you know, I was checking out Monet's and things like that, and other stuff that was happening around that, those Seurat paintings and the dot paintings and Van Gogh, whatever. And then I just I thought that was what art was. That's what painting was. But then I kind of mistakenly walked into the modern wing, and all of a sudden I was confronted with this Rothko painting. You know, and when I saw the Rothko painting, I flipped out, and I must have looked at that thing for a couple hours, close up, medium, far back, trying to leave the room, but then coming back to it, sitting down, trying to leave the room again, and I just can't take my eyes off of this thing. To the point, I went downstairs to the bookstore with the very little money I had at the time. And I was like, I can't afford a book, so maybe I can buy a Rothko poster, you know, or something. And sure enough, they had a poster there. I'm looking at the poster and I thought, this is sort of cheating. I said, I don't want to look at a poster of a Rothko. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the art store. I'm going to get some cheap paper and watercolors, and I'm going to try to make these things. And that's how I started painting, you know, and totally not on an intellectual, just completely on a feeling level. So I brought all this paper home and started trying to make, you know, color field paintings, the best I could. And I made hundreds of these things for months, and I just couldn't figure out why I couldn't get them to look as good as Rothko. But I just kept going. And that is also a beautiful, story also concerning, like composition and trumpet practice as well, you know, this idea of being surprised by something and not being, judgmental about it, but being open to it. And then pursuing that thing, you know, and pursuing that thing and trying to make something from those, emotions.
Okay, I do a lot of counterfactuals on this show, or just thinking about like what I guess could have been. Was that an inflection point for you? Because, and also, I'll just throw this extra question on there. What was it about the, let's just call it counterfeit feeling of a poster that didn't sit right with you?
I think not only with the poster, but in music too. You know, I always composed my own music from an early age as well, along with the painting. It's just, I don't know, I've had this incredible just need to make my own things, you know. I wrote plenty of songs on blues structure, for instance, you know what I'm saying? But, you know, I didn't want it to sound like someone else. So I had to think about different intervals, think about different ways of moving something, thinking about, how to subvert the thing to make it more personal. But I think most of that came from feeling, and it wasn't, I mean, I love a good poster. You know what I'm saying? Just like anybody, I have posters around here. I have a beautiful Sun Ra poster that I look at every day over here from Lounge Acts in Chicago years ago. But there's something, I guess, visceral just about doing it yourself, just making something yourself that has always been a part of me and has probably been the most important part of me, because I've done it for so long. And, I guess I haven't done much work that's, you know, renditions or something of someone else's work, you know, both in whether it's, of course, I gave you the example of trying to copy the Rothkos, but, you know, I spent years also copying Miles and Clifford Brown and, you know, and Sun Ra and Duke Ellington and, you know, Xenakis, you know, trying to find, a vocabulary out of these other vocabularies.
Do you know what it is in you where you, again, you could have been someone who were like very happy, like just doing like a Miles Davis pastiche or something like that, right? But there was something in you where you're like, well, no, I want to create my own vocabulary. It reminds me in some way of like French philosophy, where like to stake their claim, everyone creates their own kind of vocabulary for existence.
Yeah. So what's the question, really?
What do you think is in you where you're like, well, I want to have my own vocabulary. I want to create my own vocabulary, when you could have been someone who very easily, you know, you're a talented performer, right? You could have just done, all right, I'm going to do, you know, Miles Davis or whoever. Or
sure. There's plenty of people who follow a path, you know, when something works. You know, if I wanted to play standards in the matter of Miles prestige recordings, I love doing that, and I did love doing that, and I probably could be still doing that if that was interesting to me. But I don't know. It's nothing against, because that's the whole. It's not an argument, but it's more of a, like, you know, the people who spend their whole lives playing other people's compositions, and the whole thing is how to obviously do your own thing in the realm of those compositions. And you have some of the greatest musicians on the planet that did that. You know, I don't know. I've just always been interested in doing my own thing, you know, and trying to be honest with what's in my mind, in my head, both intellectually and spiritually. And at some point pretty long ago, probably in the 80s, it really hit me that this idea of spirituality through sound and vision could be the path. So because of that thought, I tried to just develop that the best I could in the most personal, honest way I could. So it was that kind of quest. And of course, you know, spurred on by amazing, artists who came before me, whether it was, you know, Sun Ra or Rothko or, you know, or a million other people that I've been inspired by over the years. But one thing I will, you know, a lot of people I love the most have created their own vocabularies and things like that. So it's also, but it's hard to answer. I guess just the quest of still asking questions about intellectual and spirituality and spiritual matters of why we're here, what are we doing here, why does one do something? I'm definitely not a person who just. Matter of fact, I'm completely against being manipulated by mass media, which we've been dealing with, which you deal with since you're in the womb. So it's really a quite a long process to create yourself from things that some people believe they've been coerced into, that don't realize they have a way out. So I've always been into, I want to live a creative life under whatever circumstances, and I'm going to follow that, what I call just the total creative life without any compromise. And luckily, I've been able to do that for the most part and live a modest existence with a hell of a lot of joy and happiness.
Yeah.
Also, sadness and, intense, all the emotions. But, I think I've done a pretty good job of following that and trying to keep developing that thought. It's almost, it's not really about notes and colors anymore. It's more about how to take this energy and share it with people.
Mm-hmm. I mean, this resonates with me pretty deeply, but I think it took me personally a long time to dig out from the detritus of mass culture in order to understand what I wanted.
Absolutely.
And it seems like you kind of figured it out earlier on in your life. And I'm kind of curious about that process because it is very difficult, whether it is culture, placing kind of heteronormative or patriarchal kinds of ideas on people's heads, or whether it's just like, the things to listen to are Britney Spears and Taylor Swift, whatever, right? Not that, I mean, if you like it, you like it. I don't care. But telling you this is all that there is to music.
Right.
It's sometimes difficult to get out from under that. And I'm kind of curious about how you were able to.
Yeah, I guess it was just, I grew up in a very regular household. My mom and dad really didn't listen to music. But earlier on, my first 10 years were in Jersey City in New Jersey. They used to go to polka dances and stuff with live polka bands that were just killing it, and it was amazing to hear with the accordions and the clarinets and the trumpets. And I used to go to those things and really enjoy them. And then we moved to a suburb of Chicago called Naperville back in 1975. Before it was even a town, it was more of a cornfield. And my days I started playing trumpet at 10 years old, just because I picked an instrument in high school, and I happened to be pretty good at it. But my days were, you wake up, you go to school, you come back, the TV goes on, you start watching some TV or something, you do a little homework, you watch some more TV, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And it's like, my old man was really, really into cooking shows. So I was watching Julia Child cooking shows, and actually I enjoyed doing that. I love cooking as well. Probably comes from that. But, it was like regular sitcoms of the day and all that kind of, but at some point, I don't know how, I think maybe I was 14 or something, where it just got in my mind that I started reading Dizzy Gillespie's book, To Be or Not to Bop, which is an amazing, book about those times. And, I just really got it in my head. I became a Miles fanatic. I would wear Miles Davis t-shirts to high school and stuff, when I was 14, 15. And that's when I decided I just wanted to, because I read that book and they were all saying they just wanted to get to New York or a city in order to play jazz, whether they finished school or not. So I was basically begging my parents to let me drop out of school and just move to Chicago and play jazz. Of course, they didn't like that idea so much. So I had a horrible time in high school. It's one of the times that still gives me goosebumps. I really did not like that you went to these classes and people were just trying to pump you with this information that to me, I wasn't really interested in. And later on in life, you understand that, okay, it teaches you some form of critical thinking and that whole type of thing. But at the time it was horrible. My mindset was on, I have to get out of this, this is hard. So that's when I started going home. Instead of turning on the TV, I would go to my room and put on these Miles Davis records and play trumpet and pretty much not leave the room. And then, be woken up the next day and be told you had to go to school and do this stuff. So, I completely rebelled against all of that. So I'm sure that has something to do with it. And sure enough, the day I graduated, I moved to Chicago and I was like, I'm doing this. I don't know what I'm doing or how I'm going to do it, but I'm going, and that would be 1983. And it took me 83 to maybe 93 to go through all of the ups and downs of, trying to learn this art form.
Yeah.
While at the same time studying classical composition. And I also was seeking out composition teachers at University of Chicago, like Easley Blackwood, and at DePaul University, like Sheldon Natofsky. So I was also very interested in composition, not in just jazz composition, but minimalism, classical music, contemporary classical music, along with all my interest in learning compositions by Andrew Hill and learning the Art Blakey catalog, which a lot of those songs I transcribed for various things. But maybe I'm answering too much. Did I go too far, too little on that question?
No, but it brings up another question. Did you think something was off with suburban life prior to either picking up the trumpet? And as a side note, I think it's very interesting. A lot of the people I talk to on the show, it is very random. I just talked to Zena Parkins last week, and she was like, I was assigned to do harp. Right. She didn't pick it. She was a pianist before that. I didn't pick it, but they wanted us to have also an orchestral instrument so that we would be a little more social. And then she just took to it. Right. So I find that to be extremely fascinating. How virtuosos in whatever instrument you are. Yeah. It happens to be random a lot of the times why you picked it up. But did you find something off about Suburbia before the trumpet, before reading that Dizzy Gillespie book, before getting into Miles Davis, wherever you want to put the line? Or was or did these things jar you out of it?
It would. Okay, so those first 10 years in Jersey City were probably the happiest days of my childhood. You're in Jersey City, right next to New York City. My father worked at Metropolitan Life Insurance, so he would take the train over. We went to New York a bunch, went to baseball, Yankees games and things like that. And in Jersey City, all your friends were on the same block, You also had family all around you. You also had the pizza place on the corner that even at the age of, 7, I could walk up there and get a slice of pizza, because my mom would be, go get one, whatever. or go to the candy store. You know what I'm saying? I had a lot of freedom, a lot of friends, a lot of family, and this kind of action that was always happening. When I moved to, the suburbs of Chicago when I was 10, it was an amazing shift in, I didn't know why we were there. There's no friends on the block. There's nowhere to go. There's a cornfield here. There's no pizza place within miles, There's absolutely no place to walk to. It was insane, man. But that was also the year that, like I said, that at the school, they ask you to pick an instrument. And that's funny what you say about Zena, because I'll tell you why I picked the cornet, I wanted to play the saxophone. So I picked the saxophone, and then the band director said there's too many people playing saxophones, so you have to pick something else. And then my older brother was sitting next to me, who's a year older, and who had already been playing accordion. He started accordion lessons 2 years prior to that in New Jersey. When he started playing the accordion, I also wanted to play the accordion. I was like, I want to play that. And then I said, well, you should probably pick another instrument. And then I became very interested in the clarinet because I saw them in these polka bands and it was cool. But my folks at that time couldn't afford to give me lessons, because it wasn't in the school. It was private lessons. So they said, you're going to have to wait until you're 10 and then you can, pick an instrument in school. So I actually had to wait 2 years, even though I was interested in accordion, then clarinet. And then not high school, in elementary school, they were like 10, what do you want to play? I said saxophone. Then they say no to the saxophone. I'm like, what's going on here? And then my older brother says, I want to play the cornet. And out of spite, I said, no, you already have an instrument. You play the accordion. I said, I want to play the cornet. So that's how I picked the instrument. So that's kind of funny. So it's kind of
almost a Nietzschean origin story. Like it starts off in resentment.
Yeah, exactly.
And then becomes the focus.
Yeah, then all of a sudden I'm pretty good at it, and then I'm like, oh, cool, I'm good at this thing. That's all right. I forgot the second half of the question though. It was like, when did it? But yes, when that saved me. That saved me because I'll tell you what, man, moving to a suburb like that was absolutely stifling. Mm-hmm. I felt horrible and I didn't know why because I was too young. I was going to the school, trying to do stuff, playing some sports, playing the cornet, doing the thing. But, I never figured out so much why I didn't like it probably till later, when I had this epiphany about I want to play jazz, trumpet or whatever, and compose.
Yeah. It's really difficult to articulate why something's off when you're that young. You just have this vague gut feeling. You're like, this doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
And literally everyone who's ever talked about, like Bob Odenkirk's from Naperville, I've talked to other jazz musicians from Naperville. No one said anything great about it. They're just like, it's a suburb. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the suburbs, just that it's very limiting.
Yeah. I mean, now it's more of a city almost, but back at that time, it was absolutely, for me, stifling. And I just wanted out as quickly as I could, Yeah.
Was there something specific about the trumpet or the cornet that either emotionally or the energy or intellectually, whatever it is, that felt right to you?
I don't know. I mean, it just so happened that I could play stuff on the thing. So, so because of that, and they kept like promoting me to the next whatever. I was freshman in high school. They're like, we want you to play in the sophomore group. And then they're like, we want you to play in the main group or whatever. And then, but also that was, and we had a jazz band too. So, the jazz band director was pretty hip. Ken Kaiser was his name. I'm not sure if he's still teaching, but, it got to a point where I was kind of even running the rehearsals for the jazz ensemble because you'd play these competitions and all. So for me, the whole thing of school was just that, I was skipping all my classes, just hanging out in the band room until the director of the band was like, you can't do this anymore. You have to go to your classes. You're not gonna, and then people trying to push you in different directions, being in a jazz musician is really hard. You should go to college and get your degree so you have something to fall back on. It's always like, you can't do this. You can't do this. You can't do this. You need something to fall back on. You need something to fall back on. I'm like, I'm not going to fall back on anything. This is what I want to do. What are you talking about falling back on? You're already discouraging me from like doing something. I haven't even like started to develop, intellectually and spiritually yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why do that? So it's really, I look at it just as like a kind of really backwards way of learning or whatever. It seems like for me the perfect idea of schools would be you'd have a school on every corner, and then you pick what you like to do, and you craft some kind of curriculum around that. You know what I'm saying? Instead of forcing all these kids just to do this stuff, and then all of a sudden you're thrown into college and you have hundreds of thousands of dollars and student loans, and then what? You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know, I don't know anything, but I do know something when you hit the point where you can intellectually and spiritually grow, not necessarily in that order, then you can start to do something. Then you can start to make realizations and hopefully bust through this kind of iron curtain of bullshit that's you're constantly being bombarded with, and come to realize yourself. And that's even to the point of people blaming their parents, on a lot of stuff. And I mean, at some point you have to become your own person. So I felt that I maybe realized that earlier on, like I want to be my own person. You know what I'm saying? Just the simple concept of that freed me quite a bit, and I'm 57 now. I'm still working on it, Mm-hmm. So, because that stuff that happens around us is always there, Yeah. It's also part of the reason I live in the desert now. I live in Marfa, Texas. So it's,
wow.
I've been out here for 8 years, and even trying to get more intense with, leaving strip mall, big box, weird culture, and just having space and energy and time to develop things.
Yeah. But I think that kind of stuff can be scary for a lot. I mean, I am halfway there, right? And I also still, part of my living is making things for giant studios and large corporations and whatever. Right. And so I'm not, it's to think of every time that I leave a little bit of that culture behind, there's a little bit of fear. And then once I break through, it's fine.
Yeah.
But it seems like you had resolve or you were fearless from an early age. And I'm wondering if that's could just be a quirk of how your brain formed. It could be something that developed in that move where your life was ruptured, or it could be something else. I'm wondering if you ever thought about where that kind of, I'll call it fearlessness. I don't know how you want to characterize it, but where did it come from?
Yeah. I mean, it's fearlessness, but it's also fear. So it's kind of all of those things. Because moving into Chicago at 18 and not knowing what's going on and trying to figure that out was scary, you know what I'm saying? But also exhilarating and also amazing. But I mean, I have to say, that 1981 Sun Ra concert really jolted me, and it was like, that was part of it. Like I said, reading this Dizzy Gillespie book was part of it. Reading anything I could on Miles was part of it. Also in tandem with I was studying Stravinsky scores, and Prokofiev and Bartok, these type of things before I got into, people like Lamont Young and Steve Reich and all this, Philip Glass and these things. And then eventually getting into Xenakis and Rigetti and later Kaya Sariaho, who just passed away.
This path is familiar to me. The same kind of one that I went down. Yeah. So it's like when I'm to pinpoint like where where I snapped. It's absolutely. Well, I'll tell a personal thing too. I wasn't going to get into it, but when I was a sophomore in high school, when I was right before maybe it was right before I was going to be like, this is what I want to do, something happened. I had some kind of a seizure or somebody drugged me and I was
rushed to the emergency room in Naperville, where I was taken to the doctor first. The doctor said take him to the emergency room. Then I was in a coma for 3 days. And I woke up out of the coma with my parents sitting there crying. And of course, I had no idea whatsoever what was going on. And I woke up, and the first things that I was being bombarded with were, what did you take? What did you take? You have to tell us what you took. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't even know what you're talking about. You've been in a coma for 3 days. You're just waking up. You must have taken some kind of drugs or something, so I'm immediately being like told that I'm taking drugs when I don't know what's going on. And I didn't do any drugs or alcohol or drinking or anything, before my junior year. but that also was quite a jolt in the form of who trusts me. It was a question of trust. So at that age, I was like starting to, made me think of trust a lot. And, I decided that I would trust only myself. And I think it comes directly from that, experience. Also the things I've reading, also my teachers who were, my good teachers who were pushing me in different directions to experience life in. And because that happened, and because I became, in one way, I became much more insular, because when I went back to school, a couple of weeks later, I was labeled as a drug user. And even some of my friends that I had, their parents told them not to talk to me anymore. So it was kind of like this insane, like, and you know how it is in high school. It could be kids are nasty at times, So I was like, all right, now I'm a thing that I'm not, and that everyone is like looking at me and like staying away from me. So this is wild, So I said, I'm going to stay away from that. And I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to play this horn and develop myself and get out of here so I can, at the time, make music, my focal point, and this idea of trusting the self and not relying on outer forces to shape you, shape yourself, so that was, I don't believe I've ever shared that in the hundreds of interviews I've done or whatever, but, that now that you're pressing me to talk about, very specific things, I would say that might have been one of the snapping points that made me somewhat fearless and also stupid, and also, gave me exhilaration and a reason and a goal. And I guess looking back at it, I'm so happy that all that went down. Years later, they gave me Alumni of the Year award.
Did you talk about your experiences in high school at the ceremony?
No, I've never stepped foot in that high school because it was such a horrible, terrible experience. I graduated with a D- average, and it was the worst time of my life. But I think it might have been also the catalyst for living the life I have now, and I'm absolutely grateful for that.
Yeah. There's also, I think, that comes out of this, a knowledge of who creates the narrative. And
right.
if there's something that doesn't fit in the narrative, people just kind of push it aside, where you're like, no, someone must have drugged me, but no one wanted to hear that or figure out who, like, if someone drugged you, my question would be who did it and why, and let's find out these questions. But people were like, well, I found this moving to Los Angeles that a lot of people, at least in my business, are lazy and just want to do the minimum amount to kind of get by.
Right.
And And it was a real surprise coming from New York, where like everyone's hustling.
Right.
But I think that's a general thing where people are just like, well, this story doesn't make sense, so let's just smooth out the stuff that doesn't make sense, even if it's untrue.
Right. Yeah. There was a little bit of looking into it, but not enough. And for my folks for years, I every now and then in a quiet moment, there would be, you did take something that time, didn't you? You know what I'm saying? But I'm like, no, I'm telling you, it could have very well been some kind of a seizure too or something, which they didn't check. I found out later from medical reports that they didn't even check for seizures or anything that's in their head. In the doctor's head, it was like this dude took something and that's what it is. And it's like, but they couldn't even say what it was because it was, and I couldn't say what it was. So yeah, man, it's like, it's that whole thing with, but with all that I've learned, you can't, also through my Buddhist practice, and I'm not just a Buddhist now, but I was hardcore into that for a long time, you create your own path and you have to know, you need to know that at an early age that you have that power, I mean, how many people, there's so many people, I'm sure we both know that have taken paths of what they thought they should do, or what somebody else thought they should do, whether it's parents, whether it's peers, whether it's, chasing money, whether it's chasing whatever. But you're not really taught to learn your own, like we talked earlier about developing this spiritual, intellectual, thing that we all have the potential to tap into and to, really, really at least try to understand the self and try to understand a path that is, for me, everyone should be creating beautiful energy in order that we all live beautiful. I mean, it's simple, but it's like, I don't know, but we all know that not everyone thinks like that. And I'm not telling anyone how to live or how to think, but all I know, it's helped me personally to try to develop this stuff at that early age and to have this kind of, if you want to call it fearlessness or call it drive, or it's never left me. As a matter of fact, it got more and more intense as time went on. It absolutely not. I don't think for a day has ever left me. And when there are these moments of depression, it's very simple for me that you're depressed. You feel, just make something. And then as soon as I make something, it completely goes away. So it's like, it's something that I've learned from myself that I can do. That's very simple. That works. So that also keeps the drive fresh and beautiful.
Oh yeah, totally. In fact, I get irritable if I go a day or more without, I don't know, just writing even the dumbest thing, just writing something like a joke or something, as opposed to like even something larger like a script. I start to get irritable until I am able to actually, write or do whatever.
Yeah.
I'm very curious about how you came to have any kind of spirituality. And I'm wondering, did you grow up with religion at all? Did you have faith when you were younger that then kind of shifted, or was it a totally new discovery in your 20s?
I mean, I came up Catholic, so we went to church on Sundays, At some point, I didn't know why. There would be maybe something from when the priest gives his, what do you call it, when he talks for a few minutes, just
sermon, homily, something like that?
Kind of something like that, on occasion you get a little nugget of something in there, But as far as the whole, I mean, my stuff, I wouldn't looking back consider myself a very spiritual kid, coming up through this stuff, going to church. I went because I was made to go, pretty much, then through high school, you kind of stop going, and then sometimes go like on Christmas or something, like that, just to be with the family, probably reluctantly even then. And then when I moved into Chicago in 83, it was only a few years after living in Chicago that a friend of mine took me to a Buddhist meeting where there were probably, I don't know, 200 people chanting together in this room, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, and my friend just said, "You don't have to do anything. There's nothing weird, or you don't have to. If you feel like chanting with me, do. If not, just sit there and enjoy the." And I started chanting with them, and the fact is, it just felt immediately absolutely amazing, So after chanting for, I think, whatever it was, 15, 20 minutes, I was so exhilarated, and it felt so good to be around this thing, and then you learn, well, what does Nam Myoho Renge Kyo mean, and then it's, this kind of fusion with the universe and that type of thing, which was, that sounds cool. That sounds beautiful. And from that moment on, I just kept doing it. So, but I kept doing it because of the feeling of it. It just felt great. I didn't know quite what was going on. And then I did that for a good 10 years. After 3 or 4 years, I became kind of a leader in that. And I would be the guy in the microphone leading the 200 people chanting, And also you learn about compassion. You learn about the idea of turning poison into medicine, or taking a bad situation and that you have the power to control that. And that if you take responsibility for everything, and then you have the power. And so with that practice, it kind of added on to my already kind of like, I'm doing this, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm making this music thing happen no matter what. And also in Buddhism, they have a thing where it said, make something happen no matter what. You chant about it, you ruminate on it. You don't just intellectualize about it. You're actually making sound and reverberating with a lot of people, or alone. And even chanting alone just gives me just this amazing feeling. So that became my main spirituality for a good 10 years, until I was involved with Soka Gakkai, which is an organization that purports this, that, I don't know if that's the right word, who, disseminates these ideas, Nichiren Daishonin and his writings. But then you start reading stuff about this is the only religion and you shouldn't do anything else. And it's the only way you're going to get, enlightenment and blah, blah, blah. And then I didn't buy any of it. I was like, this is bumming me out. It's like, because I became interested in Zen Buddhism, for instance, and I started reading stuff and especially, the famous book, Beginner's Mind, which I always come back to all the time. Just like I want to have a child's mind for everything, even stuff I know. So even when people ask me a question, do you know? And your first response is, of course I know that. You know what I'm saying? But then it became like, let me consider what you're asking me, and then do I really know that? Then you get deeper into the actual question. Anyway, all of this stuff kind of played into my own spirituality, which blossomed out of that, and which is also, but what we're talking about is also, I create energy for hopefully people to draw off on, and I'm absolutely a believer in this energy and this field and this, call it spirituality, call it a projection of energy towards the utopian future.
Yeah.
There's so much apocalyptic stuff seemingly around us, but if you turn off the TV and you know, for lack of a better whatever, or
no, for sure.
The news, all the news on your phone. I still read the New York Times and I follow stuff. Of course, I'm not like in some like crazy thing, but I'll occasionally look at Fox News stuff just to see how absurd things are and whatever. I live in Texas, so you have people like Ted Cruz that are completely out of their minds, and But I'm absolutely, that was the pathway towards some kind of this feeling of just creating energy and hoping that it connects with somebody or some form of people or beings or anything universal, whatever,
Okay, we're right at the end. And just one last question kind of about this topic. Earlier on we were talking, and I'm paraphrasing, so please correct me if I'm not saying this exactly correctly, but you're part of your artistic or aesthetic project is being as you as possible, or figuring out who capital YU is. And at the same time, I think spiritual practice, or especially like Buddhism or chanting, is getting out of, is like connecting with something larger than yourself. And I'm wondering if those two impulses are in conflict with each other in you, or if they work together in some way, if that even makes sense as a question.
No, I think so. I mean, I think they do work together. I think that's the ultimate thing is to try to connect your personal being and energy with the energy of something that's unfathomable. Because we talk about even our universe now, but you discover a million more universes. So it's like, it's impossible to not, consider that. And also, so when I say I'm giving energy to a person or some kind of being, I'm also trying to connect with these, seemingly endless metaverses, and not just things that you seemingly are there, but also things that are not there. Because I think it's I think we haven't tapped into what's behind all that. You know what I'm saying? Which I'm sure is something that none of us have ever even like dreamed of or thought of. You know what I'm saying? So part of the thing is like busting through. A lot of the times when I do, and it doesn't have to be this, because you can play the most delicate, beautiful melody and it has the capacity to shatter something. But I was doing a lot of noise music too, like on a record like Vortis of the Fawn, which is kind of directly related to viscerally with loudness breakthrough with noise, trying to break through something, break through this wall of incoherence and not knowing. But also, I am also a believer in deeply respecting the idea of why do we have to know everything? You know what I'm saying? I mean, not knowing is could be just as interesting, or being, it's not, meaning not something that you're missing, but maybe that's something else. I don't know what it is, but, I don't know, just asking these questions, but for sure, it's not for me at all about the self at this point. It's about how do you get this sack of whatever to send energy out that has the capacity to illuminate something that might not even be an idea.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm talking about, man.
No, but I love it. It makes total sense. I love it.
I know that's how I really do feel that way. So it's a little bit difficult to put in words, but I feel it's something I've been developing for years.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. And that actually seems like a great place to end too. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Man, it was a pleasure, man.
This is so lovely.
Really fantastic.
And we'll see you next time. Bye. Bye, oh, 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 bye. Bye, bye. Begin.